It's September 8th, 2023. I'm trying to really orient, center, and direct at the moment. Um, I made a discovery, um, like if this is air and this is sea, or like whatever this is, if they attacked at the same time, oh God. And it's almost, I mean, this is the monetary system in the United States of America with the Federal Reserve notes. This is what we look like. And I'm like, well, if like the mighty, mighty eagle graced and blessed us with the great Thanksgiving bird, and somewhere there's angry birds, and somewhere there's Cornish hens, and somewhere there's a polar bear of great importance. I look to almost like a superhero of sorts in like an animal spiritual way. Sometimes I look to the lion, although that lately is a little more. So I'm like, what might it look like? Because if we've already got this dominion. I mean, I look to the space program from when I arrived. I mean, Godspeed, it says, G-O-D, the first three letters, over John Glenn's name. Now, he's like the personal superhero for me in my story, but the more household name than John Glenn is Neil Armstrong. I mean, like, again, you always think that there's a fish, but then there seems to be this larger fish. So I'm always careful of that. So he's the personalized household name that was given to me that I've never really ever mentioned to anybody, not purposely. Just quietly knowing how they built the consciousness of my existence here amongst the humanities. Um, so I'm looking at that. I know he's my personalized superhero, but I know that the one that everybody celebrates is Neil Armstrong. He's the agreed upon front runner for the most whatever man in space that is just, and then my personalized space person is someone different in clinging on to the reality that I was birthed into while this televised portion of whatever's going on that I'm trying to gain heads and tails of. But definitely, dominion wise, it would appear that we already won the dominion and were granted the dominion, and now it's defense of the dominion and it's maintenance of the dominion. So when I see things on the television, like I'm going to reference, on one hand, the New York City school chancellor is saying that the buses are not going on strike. But then elsewhere in the city that never sleeps, it looks like they're busing in these migrants from I don't know where. They're not from my Big Ten. They're somebody else's tents. And they're piling up. And I'm like, even though it looks like tour buses and entertainment, why that looks like a bus strike? Like they're sending bodies into a city that can't support them, and it's going to cost billions of dollars. And the mayor's even saying it will destroy New York City. So then I'm going back to the reference of again, the physical ed department, PE, and then the PSI and the pressures per square inch. And then I look at this and I'm like, something happened in 1994. I don't know what. And then all of a sudden this, instead of like if Venus had to get a message through to Mars, and there's like 7 friendships at Mercury, and like, oh my god, that's the love story with my kind that I was born to. And I just really love my dad. He's just a great guy. So with that, feeling like it's under attack when being traumatized by all of this visual storyboard, um, I'm looking, like, I know what Neil, Neal, like Armstrong, Neil Armstrong looked like in Mercury type NASA astronaut way. But then there's this promotional thing that the sporting industry, whole SEC challenge system of its own that's going on, and they're saying that it's Shaquille O'Neal in 1994 looking like this, trying to carry, for some reason, Pepsi. And I'm like, why would he even be touching like Dominion territory? So that gets confusing. And what are they trying to say at the Mars company? Like, if IPS calls, like, at, what does that say? Oh, that says Mars or affiliates. So I'm watching ABC7, and now they've got this like big commercial on that says, like, attention Disney, National Geographic's Spectrum and the 7 are having trouble. Like, you've lost it. Like, that's big, you've lost 7. And I'm like, I watched The Community, and I watched the Space Force fiction, and I gain real clarity in who I know and what doppelgangers exist in that whatever her legitimacy at maintenance of the whatever. So I am just watching carefully, and this is what they put up.
Reaction to provocative remarks from Mayor Adams. He said at a town hall, the migrant crisis would, quote, destroy New York City. It comes as he is Governor Hochul pleading for more help from Washington. Eyewitness News reporter Crystal Cranmore with more on the fallout.
The mayor says thousands of asylum seekers continue to show up to the Roosevelt Hotel each month with little support from the federal government. The mayor says the city has...
With the mayor built in this way, it almost looks like he's gaining reinforcements of some kind. And like, I don't, like, it has this very seedy, like, Deep Space Nine feel to it, but it definitely feels like the city's under attack. And I don't know, he appointed some chief of staff again. And I'm like, since when?
Reached a breaking point.
This issue will destroy New York City.
But now, under this flag, again, I know Old Dominion within this and what it stands for. They actually sent a social study textbook from the DOE. So I guess it's this agreed upon local whatever, while they have in some places this Excelsior flag flying as well. But always the United States of America for one storyline and one tether, and fettered for the federal notes and the federal children, while operating in this state of New York.
destroy New York City.
Mayor Eric Adams not mincing any words this week, expressing concern over the influx of migrants.
Now, this looks like a bus strike. I mean, if they're biological entities exiting and then expecting work, food, healthcare, and some priority, better care essentially than the essential workers that are here at maintenance. I'm not quite sure why this is being conducted in this manner, and I don't know how to raise my hand appropriately, and I don't even have, like, I'm full-time watching this unfold, but there's no, like, compensation on a scheduled maintenance plan. There's no bank account even anymore. Like, this is...
To New York City and the strain it's causing on resources.
Never in my life have I had a problem that I did not see an ending to. I don't see an ending to this. I don't see an ending to this.
Republicans say the mayor is right. Congressman Nick LaLota tweeting in part, the first step towards solving a problem is admitting you have one. Credit to Mayor Adams for being truthful. Meanwhile, the Legal Aid Society called the mayor's comments reckless. The city has provided shelter to more than 101,000 asylum seekers since last year. Of that number, roughly 59,000 are in the city's care right now.
What I don't understand is they put up the other day, which I put up on my documentary or journal or whatever the heck it's called. They put up this stat of the top 10 migrants in New York City. There's not one of them that looks familiar. Not one. So I don't know why the top 10, I mean, it's more, the label should have been top 10 migrant crisis, causing the crisis. Because it looks like reinforcements and shift change. Again, like I keep referencing back to, like, why does it look like Tuskegee is just projecting themselves almost over the importance of the Excelsior? And who is allowing such a thing? Why is Excelsior not being protected in a more forceful manner? I mean, like, who does step up between Mighty Eagle and the polar bear if there's some kind of great Thanksgiving from a turkey bird, while, like, Cornish hens and Angry Birds are just pointing fingers at one another? I mean, like, where does the actual work and mission get accomplished for maintenance plan of something that was granted?
The mayor has pleaded with the federal government for help. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre responded Thursday, saying the Biden administration has been working with city and state leaders and has provided $140 million this year. Meanwhile, Governor Kathy Hochul had another conversation with the White House.
And I'm like, Governor Kathy Hochul's wearing green and do not something. She's got something going on here on the whiteboard. I don't know what that's about.
I believe the answer comes from Washington in the form of work authorization. I will say I'm exploring all of our options at the state level.
And Governor Kathy Hochul says she's not ruling out the idea of having a special legislative session to address the migrant surge. In Midtown Manhattan, Crystal Cranmore, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
New at noon, police.
Okay, so that's the migrant crisis. Doesn't live here, doesn't have an invitation that I'm aware of, doesn't have dominion here, and under that United States flag, Excelsior is the other flag, not any of the 10 that are listed as like, I mean, almost seems like the top 10 terrorists that at this point that are trying to attack New York is what it feels like by moving this many bodies in without explanation, without announcement, without permission, without any kind of like treaty. I mean, it's a provocation, is what it kind of feels like. So I'm watching this, and then I'm going back to elementary school and listening to what's calling itself a chancellor, what's calling itself Banks, what's calling itself David, and the visual interpretation does not fit any of the motif for which Christianity was built. So, and what, like baby Jesus in a presepio, as far as like the real building of the foundation of that church, in this designated area. And so I'm watching this layer of consciousness, and then I'm listening, and like this gentleman, this person who's calling himself Chancellor, and David and Banks all put together, he's saying like there's no bus strike. And I'm like, but if I fast forward the news, the mayor's on saying this is something that will destroy the city. So I'm like, whose agenda is that? When I look at the flags of people that might be jealous that we have a space program and are trying to destroy the inner workings of the Dominion, in order to whatever, and creating this like busy work of, I don't know, insidiousness is what it looks like.
Into our newsroom, New York City Schools Chancellor David Banks now saying there will not be a school bus driver strike on Monday.
There won't be a strike on Monday. I just got some word recently before this event today that if we were to have a strike, it probably would not be for several weeks from now. They are committed to negotiating. So parents should not be concerned about a strike in the near future.
Well, that is the sigh of relief for the parents of up to 80,000 students. Now, the bad news is a strike could still happen sometime later next week, but you heard the chancellor saying there, he predicts if it does come, it would be weeks ahead. The union that represents the bus drivers, attendants, and mechanics says they need more money and they want a new contract.
And in other breaking news, the full final.
Now, at the same time, they're flashing this commercial. My sunlight is still at like really important, insidious things I can't seem to get away with. My sunlight is at a dangerous level. And here they're talking about Spectrum at Channel 7. It has a Disney connotation, a National Geographic. Like there's like a whole subset of importance under this lost 7 ABC Spectrum.
Spectrum TV customers, you have lost ABC7, including ABC7 Eyewitness News, Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, and more. Call 833-KEEP-MY-NETS to keep these networks.
I mean, in like larger theater, and at like defending Dominion or defending the home territory, and trying to figure out at like Earth Station or like whatever you do for like, why is my sunlight all of a sudden so ridiculously high? It wasn't like this when I first arrived as a child, but now it's up to, and I can see, Lewis made me watch something, a person called Bob Harwood speak. He speaks of Zen. Of course, for me, I'm like, all right, now I need a translation on like, are we talking like Zen, like eins, zwei, drei, like Zen? Or are we talking like, I mean, again, because in begotten and forgotten, they're still gut. But there's importance at the God for, are we talking like Zeus, Greek? Are we talking Thaddeus? Now I learned are we talking Dios? Are we talking just God? Are we talking Deus? I mean, like, there's a bunch of different important stuff built into that spell, and like, go spell what? Um, so anyhow, so he was talking about Zen, and it had some fancy words in there, and I'm just cross-referencing Star Trek, and I'm just like, wait, Biden's got a guy named Archer? I'm like, well, that's interesting. Well, again, Biden's one of those, like, I got a guy, because he's commander-in-chief and running, like, the office or the command post. So I am just watching this in horror from New York, going, I, I. I'm gonna pause this, and I'm gonna go over. Cuomo did a small piece the other night about he's growing a goatee. Again, like small things you can do in the field. For like, remember that time you were growing a goatee, right? Yeah, where was I? Oh my gosh, I made a document on that. Where did that get along to? Because I can't remember all the days put in a row, but it's on file because you were talking about East Palestine, but you meant Ohio, and somewhere else in the world they really thought you were talking about them, and like, it's a weird consciousness with all this television going on. So I'm gonna pause this and this world press. So I'm gonna pause this for a second, and I'm gonna try to find that reference. Okay, so this was the episode that Cuomo did. The year that I'm standing in is 2023. And his episode is the numbers 178, or E178.
Boy, oh boy, you guys, a lot of you were not happy about me dragging President Biden for not going to East Palestine. What's interesting to me is that not one, not two, but way too many of you thought I was talking about the Middle East, okay? Why should he go to Palestine? We have a lot of problems back home. Enough giving all this money to people from Palestine. We need to put it here to work. East Palestine, Ohio is America. Thank you for making the point that you don't even know where you're talking about, let alone what you're talking about, okay? And it matters, all right? Not everything can just be about advantage. And this idea that, oh, well, nobody's really dead, why would he go? Oh, really? Because that's the bar now, right? It doesn't matter if it's just a huge plume like this and that they've let the corporate entity that created the problem be in charge of fixing it. Representative Bill Johnson of Ohio says the administration's been dragging its feet from the start, doesn't seem to care. He joins us now. Congressman, thank you. The idea now that the White House says the president is going to go, is that news to you, and is it welcome news?
Well, I can tell you that he's promised before, and he didn't keep the promise the first time. So I'm not going to hold my breath. I can tell you that the people in East Palestine are frustrated. They still have a lot of unanswered questions, Chris. That's why we're doing a field hearing there on September 22nd, because they deserve answers, and that's what we're trying to do, is keep a focus on this so that they get their questions answered.
So what I hear from the Democrats about this is, yeah, whether it's Bill Johnson or Vance, any of these Republicans, they're complaining about this, but they haven't really been doing that much. They're just as outraged as they are about Hunter Biden as they are about anything in East Palestine. The EPA is on site. They say the well water is okay. That's how we work these situations, and we'll review it when the time comes, as if this is mostly feigned outrage. Your response?
Yeah, when you go talk to the people that live there, the people that were evacuated, the people that have had to move out of their homes. I talked to a farm family last week, I'm sorry, that actually sold their home and moved out of the neighborhood because of some of the health concerns that they had. Talk to the business owners who have had tremendous losses because their clients didn't show up and people did not patronize their businesses. The president told me himself early on to let him know what he could do. I said it would be helpful if you could make a visit. And he told me he was going to go. He hasn't been. And oh, by the way, this notion, I saw a quote from him earlier this week that says he's been in constant contact with officials there. He hasn't been in constant contact with me, Chris, and I've practically lived in East Palestine for the first 3 weeks after the derailment, and I'm there every single week that I'm not in Washington, D.C., and there's been no sign of the president.
You know, this is becoming a bigger political issue, and I welcome that because I can't believe that you guys are letting Norfolk Southern be the ones who are in charge of doing this. They created the problem. They have absolutely zero incentive to be hard on themselves about what happened. But Mike Pence decided to bring it into the campaign as well today. He said this.
President Biden hasn't visited East Palestine yet. He has said he hasn't had the chance to. What's your reaction?
Well, I think it's shameful. With everything the people of East Palestine have gone through, that the president spent so much time on vacation and sitting on a beach when he could have been there for those families that have gone through so much.
And I don't really care about, you know, the cheap shots about vacation. I mean, you know, we could go through the numbers. He's very familiar with what it's like to have a chief executive that he's working for be playing golf all the time. I don't care about that. What I care about is that it doesn't smell right, and I mean that literally and figuratively, Congressman. Why aren't you up in arms and getting Vance and trying to get Sherrod Brown and get everybody to say, hey, Norfolk Southern can't be in charge of doing this. They created the problem. You got to take the power and control out of their hands.
Norfolk Southern is not in charge. They never have been. Norfolk Southern got the message right away from me, from the governor of the state of Ohio, that they're going to be held accountable. And I can tell you, Chris, that the railroad, and look, you're right.
But hold on a second, Congressman. The people there on the ground that we talk to say they got to deal with Norfolk Southern. They're the ones who are making the assessments about whether they're sick or not. They're the ones making the assessments about what their house is worth. I mean, why?
That's not true, Chris. That's not true. I'm there, and I can tell you that that's not true. The federal EPA is there. The state EPA is still there on site. Local authorities are there. I'm there. And I've told the people of East Palestine, and some of them take me up on it. When they have a question they can't get answered any other way, they come to me. But the railroad has worked out victim compensation programs for both businesses and residents. And they've worked that out with the state, and that process is underway. So there's been a lot of progress.
Good. We'll stay on it.
So that's the disturbing ongoings. I'm in this and this at the moment. These two go together while my feet are in 2023. Chris Cuomo's growing a goatee for timing and sequencing of events while there are migrants being bussed into New York City and just letting out. And then this I showed the person who is claiming to be the chancellor of inside New York City, while under this Mayor Adams administration. I'm not sure how that got put together. So and Governor Kathy Hochul is in Albany. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole Cattaruzza. It's Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe, Galaxies, and President Joe Biden is in the White House.